I'm Eva, and I am here for another episode of The Charm of It, my knitting podcast in which I talk about my current works in progress, my finished objects, and a little bit about general knitting things. If this is your first time, welcome. Thanks for trying me out. And if you're a returning viewer, thanks so much. I still can't believe that, people actually subscribe. So I really appreciate it. I only record every other week at the moment, so if you'd like to keep up with me in the meantime, I tend to share what I'm knitting on Instagram, and you can also get in touch with me via Ravelry. And both of those, my username is The Charm of It. I also have my blog where you can always find all the show notes and things like that, which is thecharmofit.wordpress.com. I believe that is all the official stuff that we need to get out of the way. So I will go straight to finished objects. Oh wait, I should tell you I'm drinking jasmine tea today, and take a sip of it. I've been talking a lot today, so hopefully my voice won't give out. For new viewers, I only drink fair trade tea, so I think I only have 3. Yeah, I have the jasmine green, and then I have an Earl Grey lavender and a Ceylon, which is my everyday tea. So I just prefer fair trade and organic for things like that. So that's why I don't have a lot of interesting flavors, but it works for me. I tend to like to do what I know anyway. As I was saying, even though it's been 2 weeks, I don't really have many finished objects to show you. I wasn't able to knit much, and I was very sad about that at first and a little frustrated, especially the last few days. And then I remembered that I really wanted to commit to slow knitting this year, and I was, looking back over this month and seeing that I hadn't finished much compared to January. And then I decided that, I had enjoyed all the time that I had spent knitting, and that's really what matters. Knitting is not a race or a production line for me, and I think for anyone who it's a hobby. So, yeah, just a little, I had to remind myself of that. I don't need to be making things every 5 seconds, and where would I put them anyway? So my finished object that I finished, I think on Friday, yes, is my hat. I call this a hint of snow tam because it's based on the Mary Margaret Tam pattern, who is a character on Once Upon a Time. And Mary Margaret Blanchard is her name in this world, and she is Snow White in the fairy tale world, so it was a bit of a pun. And I knit this right now to be part of the knit along going on at Double Knit Podcast, which is an audio podcast I recently found and have just been really enjoying. And they're doing a knit along for things inspired by TV and movies. So thought it would be a good time, especially since now I have a hat to match those gloves that I showed you last time. So this is out of Quince & Company's Turn, which is their wool silk fingering blend. And as you can see, it just drapes beautifully once you block it. And there's a lot of really good stitch definition. It shows off the leaves and the lace quite well. The pattern does not call for beads. I added them. I saw a couple other Ravelry members had done that, and I thought it looked really good. And since my gloves have beads, I thought that would be a good addition. The other changes I made to the pattern is I made a doubled brim so that it would be a little warmer. And I used some of the other dye lot that I had used for the gloves on the inside of the brim. Oh, apparently my camera doesn't think you should see that difference. And so then I knit all this according to pattern, except I used 000s for the brim and size 0s for the body. The pattern designer calls for size 3s to get 6 to 7 stitches an inch, so she must be a very tight knitter, and I'm a very loose knitter. And then once I had finished this chart, you go on, it's a free pattern, to another chart for the mesh. You remember she's basing this on a hat that Mary Margaret actually wore on one of the episodes. And I thought it looked really pretty, but I was afraid it was getting a little long. So I think that this is supposed to be a 9 or 10 row chart, and I only did maybe 4 rows of it. And then I started my decreases, and I also decreased more quickly than the pattern called for, because once again I was worried that otherwise it would be too big. And then the last thing I did was I added a tassel. If you follow me on Instagram, I had done everything except the very end, and I wasn't sure what to add for a finishing touch. and somehow the idea of a tassel proved irresistible. So, and I added a few little beads to it as well. And yeah, oh, camera, come on. There we go. So there's my tassel. And I will put it on for you. As you can see, it blocked to just the right size. I will include all the specifics of the modifications I made on my project page on Ravelry, just so that you can get an idea. It's nice. I tend to only wear berets, so I've knit quite a few at this point, so I start to get an instinct for, you know, how long something is, and then when the decreases need to start, that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of people who've knit this pattern cut out repeats around here to make it smaller because they're getting a significantly larger gauge. So that's another way to deal with it. But I am super happy with how this turned out. I wore it yesterday with my gloves, and I wore it this morning, but then it was so hot that I had to take it off. So, and as you can see, the tassel is pretty subtle. You can't see it at all from the front, but it's there in the back. So the tassel will be staying, I think. I don't think it's too much. Let me take a sip. My only other finished object is not here with me. I mailed it out along with the mitts for my sister and the yarn and project bags that I gave away last month, which tells you how long it takes me to get to the post office. Sorry about that, guys. So my niece requested a sheep for her birthday, and we went through all the patterns together when I was home for Christmas, and she showed me which pattern she liked. And then when we were at the yarn store, she picked out this terrible polyester faux fur yarn stuff. And usually I would make her go with real wool. But, you know, I was still in the Christmas spirit, and I knew that a small stuffed animal wouldn't take me too long to knit, so I agreed to knit her a sheep out of this. And so then I finally started it, and the pattern has you build a skeleton out of pipe cleaners and then tie stuffing on, and then you tie the knitted pieces of the sheep to that. And it's very clever, and it worked very well, but it's not my cup of tea. I'm not really a that kind of craft person. You know how there are a lot of tutorials for different things you can do, like on Pinterest, or like Martha Stewart type crafts. I don't get a lot of enjoyment out of that. I find them too fiddly for my taste. So the good news is it only took like 3 or 4 hours, but I suppose I'd recommend that pattern if you enjoy doing things like that. It came out quite cute. And I held all of the yarn doubled to make it nice and thick and plush. And it is quite soft because of the faux fur polyester. But the irony of me as a wool-loving knitter knitting a sheep out of polyester did not escape me. That has not arrived in Texas yet, so I have not found out my niece's reaction, but I think she'll like it. I actually forgot to take any photos with my real camera, so I'll have to insert an Instagram photo here. That's not the best, so apologies for that. And Thistle is staring at me. There you go. You can come back up. Let's see. So that's all for finished objects. Sorry, the recording every other week, it makes it feel like I'm always out of practice. And I do have a question. I actually had a few, but I try to do one at a time. So Mimi MC asked, how long is a typical knitting session for me? And she mentioned that she likes to knit for very long sessions when she can because she makes fewer mistakes. So because of my illnesses, I knit in, like, I have to take a break every 15 minutes, 20 minutes, every like 400 to 600 stitches basically. And I usually, so once I've hit that mark, I set down my project and, you know, I relax my hands, I wait at least 5 minutes, and then I pick up a different project. Because I think I've mentioned this, I began knitting because I read in a book aimed at people with rheumatoid arthritis that it was good for the hands. And one of the things they suggest is that you use different weights of yarn and different needles so that your hands have a variety. So that's why I always have multiple projects and different weights going. So a typical knitting session for me, I'll knit on one project for 15-20 minutes, set it down. knit on another one for 15 or 20 minutes, and then repeat that. And I can usually knit for an hour or two at a time before my body's had enough. So clearly I don't do super long sessions, but yep, that's how I knit. I don't have a problem switching in between things, but I like the variety. That way when I'm bored with doing color work, I can switch to lace, or if I'm tired of fussing with cables, I can do a simpler project, that kind of thing. So I really enjoy having different options in my knitting basket. When I am out and about running errands, of course, I only bring my most portable projects. So a lot of this hat got knit on Thursday, which was an epic errand day and an epic day for waiting. But yeah, usually that's about what I do. And when I come back, I will share my works in progress and talk a little bit about this week's topic, which is my favorite bind-offs. Now that Thistle's gotten comfy, I'm going to have to disrupt her. So first up, I will show you one that you haven't seen, which is some mittens I am doing for Claire's Knit Along. She hosts the New Hampshire Knits podcast, and she is, oh, it's still attached to yarn, very kind and funny and very engaging. And so when I saw that she was doing a knit along for stranded colorwork mittens, I knew that I wanted to join in, and luckily she's okay with people doing worsted weight as well as fingering weight. I might have actually shown this last time, I can't remember, but I have finished the first mitten. This is a free pattern called Somerset versus Norway, which I don't think captures the magic of these little hares or rabbits and the beautiful folk art. I've made modifications, which I'm sure surprises you. I have quite small hands, so I had to cut a few stitches out of the chart, and I did that in the same way that another Ravelry member who I have linked on my project page did it, and she has uploaded a little picture of the chart that it's another free pattern to show you what to cut out. The other modification, I did a different cuff just because I wanted to. And then I did a little bit of ribbing here because the hairs looked better when they were sitting on a pretty thick thing of green. I ripped out the first one a couple of times playing with different things. And then I did an afterthought thumb because I was zoomed in on the chart and didn't realize I was supposed to be increasing for the gusset. So afterthought thumb it was. And I had to shorten the length as well because of the small hand issue. So I think I went up to here on the chart and then started decreasing. I'll try to include as many specifics as I can. It was pretty easy to decrease while still following the spirit of the pattern. And I really love how it turned out. The other thing I'm going to do, if you're wondering why there's blue yarn right here, the waste yarn, I'm going to make them convertible because most of the time when I'm outside I have Thistle with me, and it's just easier to wear convertible mitts because she gets ice between her paws and I have to defrost it with my bare fingers. A mitten won't work because it insulates too well. And of course I pick up after her, and so it's nice to have dexterity. So I just find that my convertible mitts I use all the time because then I don't have to try to stuff them back in my jacket sleeve. And I've made convertible mittens in different ways in the past, but the ways that I've tried wouldn't work with Colorwork because it would have disrupted it. So I Googled and I found this great tutorial. So it seems really simple and straightforward, and I will let you know how that goes. Hopefully by the next episode they should be a completed object. But yeah, these are out of Quince & Company's Owl, which is 50% alpaca, 50% wool, and it's woolen spun. And it's just beautiful. The green is hemlock, and I can't remember what the light gray is. I think it starts with an E. You can see it on my project page, but they just make such nice mittens. I made my dad a pair of Colorwork mittens out of this yarn, and I think it's pretty much going to be my go-to mitten yarn in the future. So I finished the first one, and then it took me a few days to cast on for the second one. But now I've started it, and since it's worsted weight and I have small hands, they go really quickly. I think I'm only doing 44 stitches around. So as you can see, the little hairs are slowly being built. I'll be doing another thumb soon. and I cannot wait to wear them. We're having an oddly warm day today, but then winter is going to come back soon, so I should get some use out of them. And I have a hat in the hemlock, so I like to wear matching things. But yeah, so those are fun. I'm still hard at work on my cardigan, which I call my Selkie Second Skin cardigan, because I think it would be nice to reimagine the Selkie stories and have fishermen who offer them personalized cardigans instead of just stealing their skin and basically forcing them to be their brides. And I believe I'd finished both the front pieces last time. So I've just done the underarm bind-offs on the back. And once again, this is going pretty slowly. But, you know, that's the way it goes sometimes. There were several days where I couldn't knit at all because of my health. So that's going to slow you down. And then the back and I have had a few discussions. I really wanted a big panel in the middle. But, of course, when you're swatching, you don't want to swatch like a 12-inch panel. And then, so I was kind of flipping through, and then I tried one panel, and I got, I think, 16 or 18 rows in, and I didn't like it, so I ripped it all out. And then this panel I am enjoying, but I realized that even though the repeats divide evenly, it's like a 28-row stitch. It's from the Barbara Walker's stitch patterns. It's called Serpentine Cables. So it divides evenly. However, row 28 does not end in the spot that I want it to end. So right now I'm modifying it to basically make this center part bigger so that it'll still look vertically symmetric. And the first way that I tried that yesterday, I ended up not liking. So I had to rip back about 8 rows, I think, and start again. So that's the other reason why it's been taking a while. But in addition to the center panel, I've got the same wheat ear cable that I have on the front, and then I'm doing a little gull cable. And these are both 4-row repeats, so I have them staggered so that there's always something interesting happening on each row. I was a little worried that it was going to be too small, so I added some more purl stitches. And I don't think it looks quite as cabled as the front does. The front, I kept the purl stitches to a minimum, so I'll keep that in mind in future designs. But I'm still happy with how it turns out. I really like the lacing panel, and I still have a lot to learn about cables, so I'm enjoying myself. I think I've got 30 to 40 rows left on the back, and then I can do the sleeves and seam it all together and do the little shawl collar. So I've still got quite a bit of work ahead of me. The sleeves should go more quickly because I'm not going to do them all over cables. And then last time I talked a little bit about designing it since I was designing it myself, but I didn't tell you how I actually got to the cast on number, so I thought I would go ahead and do that. So as you can see, I wanted to do a peplum beneath the waistband. So what I did was I figured out my gauge in seed stitch because that's what I wanted the waistband to be. I must have dropped this on the floor. Sorry about all the messiness. I'll switch back to a front piece. Okay. So I calculated, I think I had 4.5 stitches to the inch in seed stitch. And my waist is 24 inches around, and I wanted 1 to 2 inches of negative ease because I like to wear cardigans over full, like, fit and flare dresses, so I need it to cinch right there so that it looks good. So then I divided that in half for the front and back. So let's say that I decided to do 23 inches. So that means I have 11.5 inches on the back and 11.5 inches on the front. And on the front, of course, there's going to be a button band. So you take an inch out for the button band or whatever you want the button band to be. I wanted mine to be an inch. So then I had 10.5 inches of fabric I needed on the front, and I'm making 2 front pieces. So that's 5.25 inches on each side. I should have gone with a easier number to divide, but these are the real numbers. So 5.25 inches, and then times 4.5 stitches, got me to a stitch count of, I think, 24. So I knew that I wanted to have 24 stitches right here. Then for the peplum, I used a ratio from these ruffled mitts that I made for a friend a couple of years ago, and I really liked the ruffle, and it was a free pattern. So I looked it back up, and basically I looked at how big her ruffles were compared to the bottom, and the seed stitch bits stayed the same. So it was just these center panels that I needed to increase. So I knew that I wanted them to be, so they were going to disappear to quite small. So it looked like I needed them to be, what, 1.5 or 2 inches at the bottom. And since I had swatched in the honeycomb, I knew that that required 16 stitches. And so once I worked out, so each of these panels is 3, and it's going to be 3 the whole way. And then with the side panels, I just kind of sketched it out. And so then that's how I got to my final number. That's still not super helpful, is it? I don't know. This is a more complicated sweater to talk about sweater design than usual, because usually you're not going to put a peplum and stuff on. But yeah, so the actual how to figure out, you know, how many stitches to cast on at the waist is really easy. You just multiply. So yeah, in case that helps. And then, as you can see, I did a welted waistband just because the honeycomb stitch is so deeply textured and so strong that I was afraid that the waistband would it needed to be more assertive. And I had not done a welt before, but I looked up a tutorial, and it turns out it's really easy. So I will include that tutorial. I did 3 welts, also known as pin tucks. I think pin tucks is a prettier word. And they're all in seed stitch, and I did them on the 6th row of each, so basically they have 5 rows. And then the only other math you have to do is, of course, once the waistband is over, cables require a lot more stitches than seed stitch. So I already knew what cables I wanted because I swatched all these and I measured them and I worked them out. So I just wrote out how many stitches each cable took, and then I added in 3 stitches between each cable so that I could have the knit column with the purl on either side. And I added up all those numbers, and then you know, the difference between how many I needed here and how many I had here, that's how many increases I did. I basically ended up doubling and then adding a few extra. That's how much cables pull in. And then for this, it just so happened that the amount of extra fabric I needed between the waist and the bust worked out to the same. I needed, what, about 2 inches? 2 inches. And it worked out to the same as the amount of stitches you bind off for the armholes. So that made that really easy because I didn't have to fuss with this cable when I did the armhole. I will be back in a moment. As you can tell, I'm better at knitting than talking about knitting in a way that makes sense to other people. But I did put up my notes for the peplum on the project page. So in case you're super curious about all of the specifics and how I decreased in pattern in the honeycomb, I described that. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. But so peplum aside, I mean, designing your own sweater is really not that difficult if you have the Ann Budd Handy Book of Sweaters, because then you can get your own gauge and you just plug the numbers in. So this is something you guys can all do, I promise. I mean, you might not want to do it because it might just not be something that appeals to you. But in case it is, I just want to give you all a pep talk. I'm going to have to wind some more yarn soon. This is all I have left for the back, and it's in a butterfly because I ripped it all out. I really like yarn butterflies for ripped out yarn. But yeah, depends on how soon spring arrives as to how much use I'll get out of it. But the nice thing is, when it's warmer out, I can wear cardigans just almost as a jacket outside. So I should still get to use it a bit. And then my last work in progress at the moment, are some socks. And last time I showed them to you, I was hoping that I could get up to knee length, and now I know that I can. So these are my Chagall and Shadow socks, and they are mainly knit out of Mountain Colors Barefoot, which is a mohair wool blend, superwash wool, hand dyed, and I just love this colorway. And it's a heavier weight yarn, so I usually have between 56 and 64 stitches in my socks, and these are 44. And because I wanted to get to knee high, or as high as I could, I did a contrast toe and heel with Quince & Company's Turn in Barnacle that I just had left over. And then I knit toe up, even though usually I do top down, just to get to as high as I could. I'm using the Blueberry Waffle pattern, which is a really fun garter stitch rib. Okay, so obviously my calf is not this long. I actually have quite short legs, but I knit them with a lot of negative ease because the ribbing is very stretchy and I wanted the socks to be able to stay up. And so because I knit it with so much negative ease, of course when you try it on it gets much shorter. So these come to just below my knee. And I'm super happy with them. And I had to do 3 different bind-offs, which is why there's such a short tail. We'll see if I'm able to weave that in. First, I tried doing the invisible 2x2 rib bind-off, which is what I did. I can't remember which project, and I showed it to you. And I couldn't get it over my calf because of all the negative ease. And so then I tried some other bind-off, and that didn't work either. So then I finally did Judy's Surprisingly Stretchy bind-off. I think it's Judy. Or is it Jenny? It's Jenny's Surprisingly Stretchy bind-off and Judy's Magic Custom. Usually I don't like this bind-off because it flares a lot. But in this case, when I'm wearing them, I mean, they're taut. So the flaring doesn't show at all. And it was the only bind-off that would let me get the socks on. So very happy about that. And I just, rather than take notes, a lot of times I just use stitch markers to mark places like where I did the calf decreases, and then when I'm doing the second sock I can just follow along. Speaking of which, since I was feeling a bit down about how much I had knit, I didn't actually cast on for the second sock until I had finished the hat. My little hat took quite a long time, just because the ribbing was doubled and it was on 000, so the row gauge was very short. And then, as you know, if you saw the last episode, I had to re-knit the ribbing because it was too small the first time. And then once I got to the body, they were 168 stitch rounds, so that's a lot of stitches. Anyway, so that took quite a while, and I just didn't want to distract myself from it. So now I finally cast on for the second one. And believe it or not, this is ready for its heel. The heel that I use, and there's a link to the tutorial on the project page, basically you knit a heel flap along the bottom. That's why the contrast is on the bottom, so it doesn't show. And so you stop, a good 2.5 inches before your foot. So that's why I'm already ready for the heel. And I like having a simple project that I can knit when I'm talking with people or when I'm reading and that kind of stuff. So this is definitely that. And I'm knitting it the foot on size 0s to keep it nice and firm and, resistant to friction in my shoes. And then with the calf shaping, first I went up to size 1s, then I went up to size 1.5s, and I stayed at 1.5s because I didn't want a looser fabric. And so then I ended up doing, I think I increased 4 stitches overall. Yep. So even at its largest, which was from here to here, it was only 48 stitches around. So hopefully this should go pretty quickly. And I really love the finished object. I think they'll be very warm and cozy. I find knee socks very helpful for under boots. I should probably try wearing them under my skinnies too. I don't usually wear skinnies in the winter because it's so cold. I feel like I need some extra insulation there. But I bet that knee-high socks would help. Okay, sorry, tangent. Last time I talked about my favorite cast-ons, so this time I thought I would talk about my favorite cast-offs. And I don't actually have that many. I tend to knit a lot more projects that require cast-ons than cast-offs or bind-offs, sorry. But so as I mentioned, I really like the tubular cast-on for any time I do 1x1 ribbing. And sometimes I like to match cast-ons and bind-offs. Sometimes I do the tubular bind-off. It depends on the situation. I like how it looks. So they match quite well. But there's a big difference in the stretch. So let's see if I can show this. So this is the cast-on, and see how it's quite stretchy. This is the bind-off. Not so stretchy. So with mitts, that doesn't matter so much. And if you're doing a top-down cardigan, if you want it to be very fitted at the waist, that can even be an advantage because it stops it from stretching out. My Melusine cardigan, I use this bind-off, and it doesn't stretch out, which is really nice. But in a sock situation, that can be a problem. So my other alternative that still matches quite well is the invisible 1x1 rib sewn bind off, and basically you're Kitchenering it. But it's a tutorial I found on YouTube, and as you can see, so this is my sock that I did toe up. They're quite similar. This is the tubular bind off, which is also Kitchenering, but it's done in a different way, and this one is nice and stretchy. And it's a lot simpler too. So unless I have a compelling reason to need a tubular bind off, like if I want to make sure it doesn't stretch out, I just do the sewn bind off instead. And let's see. So both of those are quite stretchy. I also really like the I-cord bind off. I mean, you wouldn't use it on socks because it wouldn't be stretchy enough. But I have a sweater where I did all the bind-offs with I-cord, and the sleeves were knit from the wrist up, and so I did a provisional cast-on, and then I did an I-cord bind-off around them. Because you can do an I-cord cast-on, but mine tend to be too tight. Even when I go up needle sizes, I find it easier to bind off in I-cord more loosely. And I think they give a really nice finishing touch. So, and it's really easy to make them match. As I said, you can either do an I-cord cast-on or you can do the provisional cast-on and do the bind-off later. So I'm quite fond of that one. And then I do just the regular bind-off, especially if I've done a twisted German cast-on. So on this sweater, I did a German twisted cast-on on the bottom. Come on, camera. And then on the top, I just did a regular bind off. And what I do is I bind off on a purl row. And so then, because stockinette wants to curl, that means that those little chains automatically curl to the inside. So you get a quite similar cast on and bind off edge there. I mean, this is totally me being a details person. I really don't think other people are going to be staring at my hips and then at my neck that closely. It's just something that pleases me. So I hope you don't feel pressured to start doing that just because I mention it. I just thought it'd be interesting to chat about. And then, so since I've only recently gotten into shawls, I'm sure anyone who's a shawl knitter has done a million bind offs, because usually you start with just a few stitches and then you bind off, a million. So I was quite fond of the Pico bind off. It took forever. I had to do it in sessions, but I really liked the little loopy quality. And then for my Castles in the Air shawl, I think it's called a suspended bind off, and that was really simple, but it just gave that little bit of extra stretch, and it wasn't frilly the way that Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off can be, at least on me. But I just really liked how that looked, so I can see myself using that for future shawls. But of course, I'm still very much a shawl newbie. So those are my favorite bind offs. I guess I don't feel as attached to bind-offs as I do to cast-ons. But let me know if you have any favorites, because I'm always interested in learning more. I think it's so fun how many different options you have when you're knitting, and how all those options lead to just subtle tweaks and changes. And when we come back, I will talk about Knits in the Wild. As always, a couple disclaimers on the Knits in the Wild segment for any new viewers. I started this segment at another viewer's request, and I take the photos not in the interest of, showing off or self-aggrandizement, but just because I think it's interesting to see how knitwear works in a wardrobe. And I wear hand knits every day, I just don't get around to photographing them every day. So I've been wearing my sweaters frequently, but none of them are going to make an appearance here. I think those are all the disclaimers you need. And sometimes I take the photos kind of in life situations, so that's why they seem kind of random. I have 2 outfits this week. The first one includes my Castles in the Air shawl. I'm trying to style it in more casual ways, so I wore it over a navy sweater dress. I did not knit this, it's store-bought. And then some gray leggings and slouchy socks, which you can kind of see under the table. As you can see, I was enjoying a salad before my main meal. And yeah, I have now gotten used to wearing shawls. Like, it used to be I would take them off if I was going to eat because I was afraid I was going to drop something on them. But I'm slowly getting used to having them as a regular part of my wardrobe. And yeah, so I'm not sure if this attempt to make it more casual was completely successful or not, but I certainly enjoyed wearing it. I layered a long sleeve t-shirt under the dress, once again, just to make it look a little more casual. My second outfit also includes a shawl. This is my A Pinch of Nutmeg shawl, and it's a very long, very shallow shawl, so it's kind of like a shawl-scarf hybrid. And I wore it as kind of the finishing touch on a dandy outfit, because sometimes we just need to dress like 19th century dandies. So I have on a vest over a burgundy silk blouse, and you can't see it, but I'm wearing brown velvet trousers. So that's why I thought that the brown shawl would add a nice finishing touch and be kind of a nod to the cravats that were quite popular during the Regency era. And I am wearing this while sitting at my computer desk, and as you can see, Moth really likes to help me when I'm on the computer. She has not made an appearance today because she is sound asleep, but usually she does. Those are both the outfits. I have quite a few different coat accessory combinations to show you as well. Do let me know if this is too many or if I'm starting to repeat myself. I'm doing this for you guys, so any way I can tweak it to be helpful for you is good. So, and oh, another disclaimer. Yes, I do have quite a few coats. I have not changed sizes in the last 12 years, and I really enjoy clothes. So I am perfectly happy storing and maintaining this many coats, and since I shop secondhand, wool coats are I can get some very good deals on them. Let's get to the actual combination. So I wore my red coat with a white hat and mittens. I really like matching hat and mitten sets. They seem the same way. I also like earring and bracelet sets more than like an earring and necklace set. I don't know, it just seems easier to have some matchy-matchy, but not right next to each other the way a hat and shawl would be. And then my taupe alpaca cowl. So I think of this as like my gingerbread look. And then I wore a taupe tweed coat with my newest hat before I finished the blue one, which is like a plum, and it had the rosetude technique to add embroidery type. And then I wore it with gray gloves. It was a warmer day, so I didn't need neckwear. And the gray gloves are quite similar to one of the gray embroidered colors on the hat. I don't actually like these gloves that much, but I'll continue to use them. The the way that the thumb gusset was created in the pattern does not mimic my actual thumb, and it annoys me every time I wear them, hence my lack of affection. And then my most stylized outfit, sometimes I like being extra quirky, and it was a very warm day. So I just wore a very lightweight brown taupe cotton coat with short sleeves, which let me show off these pink and white Colorwork mitts. These are another one of my projects that I'm not super fond of. I might go into that another day. I'm actually thinking of chopping off the hand part and reknitting it. Basically, I didn't realize that the pink yarn was variegated because I ordered it based on a color card that only showed one shade, and so I had a lot of issues because I didn't really want it to be variegated. And then the sizing is off, and then the pattern has you do garter stitch edging, which is fine on the top of the mitt, but on the bottom it means that wind always gets in, which is, my fingers don't like that. So that's why I think that I might redo them again. But I wore them with a pink hat, which is also, these are from the same yarn company, and I totally knit the mitts to go with the hat because I like matchy-matchy. Then I was wearing just a lightweight blue coat with my teal scarf, my Winter Woods hat because it has some teal in it, and I think my white mittens, yeah, because they're actually a light gray, but a very light gray. They're Elsa Wool Cormo in the light gray options, so the Winter Woods hat includes similar colors. I really would like some more multiple color hats because it's so fun to match them to different accessories. And finally, I wore my gray trench coat with my burgundy leaf hat. I'm not sure if I've shown this on the podcast before. I knit it after I knit my burgundy leaf socks because my matchy-matchy love really is boundless. And I also have the same colorway and sport weight yarn to make a pair of mitts one of these days. And then I wore my brown alpaca cowl over that taupe brown. It all works. And that is all. I've actually been wearing my navy blue cowl quite a bit as well. I just haven't managed to photograph it, so I'll try to get a photo of that for next time. I don't have any books that I've come across have mentioned knitting, so I don't have anything like that. And I haven't really been reading many knitting books lately, so I don't have any reviews. And I suppose that means that I can wrap this up. Thistle has given up on me. She's over on the couch napping in the sunshine. Before this, I was FaceTiming with my sister, so she had a lot of lap time then. But really quickly before I close, I guess, I just wanted to reiterate that you should enjoy your knitting no matter what pace you knit at. I think most of the podcasts I watch, the podcasters tend to be quite prolific knitters, and I think that starts to make people feel as if they should knit at that rate, and I know that my output had increased once I started watching podcasts. And so, everyone is at different circumstances in life, and just remember that, comparison is the thief of joy, and as long as you're enjoying your knitting, it doesn't really matter whether you knit 1 sweater or 12 sweaters in a year. As long as you're having fun and getting a lot out of the process, then it's all that matters because it's a hobby. So, and with those hopefully encouraging words, I hope that didn't sound patronizing or anything. It's just something that I've been musing on the last few days as I get a little frustrated and that kind of thing. I think part of my issue too was that pretty much everything I'm knitting right now is like a second. I'm on my second mitten, I'm on my second sock, I'm on another piece of the sweater, and then my hat, I had to knit the ribbing twice. So it felt as if I was kind of on repeat. But now since I finished the hat, I have a spare spot, and I think I'm going to cast on for a shawl that I've been kind of designing in my head. So yeah, I suppose that perhaps that contributed to my kind of frustration, where I felt like I was running and running and not moving anywhere. So let me know how you keep yourself interested, I guess, in your knitting, and make sure that it's fun and not a task. And if you have any words of wisdom for making yourself feel better when you can't knit that much, which has been my situation for quite a bit of the last 2 weeks, do feel free to share. I should be responding more quickly to threads. I know that I have not in the more recent past, and that is once again because of my health. It had taken a downturn, but now we're getting back up there again. So I really love to hear from you all, and I really appreciate all the comments and likes and all that. It means a lot to me. And of course, I tend to be most instantaneously responsive on Instagram, just because Instagram is easy on my phone. I don't like trying to do Ravelry on my phone because I have to scroll up to see the message, and then there's the text box, and so yeah. I am really rambling this time. I guess I just don't want to say goodbye to you guys yet, but I will, and I will see you next time in March, which is my 3rd year knitting anniversary. So both the episodes I'm recording in that month will have to do with, those kinds of things, and I'm really excited about it. There's going to be like a hand-drawn graph for your pleasure. Bye!